Um, my answer is no, simply because traditions run their course, and sometimes we try to hold on traditions too long. Some have their place in society, and they help bring us together, and they make society better. But if we look across time and traditions that were stopped and that phased out, and they usually phase out when it's time to phase out. This one, I'm not saying it's time for this one to phase out, but this is a good example. It never really wasn't, it's rarely been an issue before, right? There have been teams that made the team may seem more liberal or conservative, but the office of the President of the United States of America was an office that could be respected. A tradition that should be upheld is the office of the President of the United States should be respected. What up, what up, what up? It's Three Brothers, No Sense, your favorite barbershop style podcast. I am Ferg, joined my co-hosts, Buff and Rozzy. Yeah, bro, I just gave him my nickname. The way the government is, I don't want to give my government name anymore. Because you just never know. So, fellas, it's been a minute, man. First of all, let me apologize to all of our listeners for not providing consistent content lately. It's life been life, and like life ain't life never before. So please bear with us. We're doing our best to get back to your regular scheduled program. But with that being said, fellas, what it do?
What up? What up? What up, y'all? First off, I want to say get ready for this flu season that's coming up in the fall because the FDA canceled the meeting that they bring all the like big brain people together and decide which strains need to be in the vaccine. And we know that we have an anti-vaxxer as the Secretary of Health and Human Services in RDK Jr., whatever his name is, whatever that is. Anyway, he canceled the meeting. And so now they don't have a way of picking the flu strains that should go in the vaccine. And that's a big deal because now they're just going to have to randomly do it, kind of guess. And so the efficacy, big word for folks out there, just means how effective it is. The efficacy of the flu virus or the flu vaccine may not be as good in the coming fall as it normally is, which means more people will get the flu. We have a measles outbreak that's still going on. Just want to throw that out there. Yeah. Health and Human Services not doing their thing. Gonna talk much about Donald Trump and his, Secretary of Defense scrubbing all the DEI and woke stuff off of U.S. websites and the military websites, including bringing down Colin Powell. I posted something that said that it pulled all the black people's names off. It kept his name, but what it did is it scrubbed like all of his accomplishments and everything off of him being buried in Arlington National Cemetery. So little stuff like that. They're just being like we knew they would. They have pulled the law enforcement database, the National Law Enforcement Database, which for anybody who doesn't know what that does, it allows like law enforcement agencies to look at this database and see if somebody was fired for cause, their history, that type of thing before they rehire so that, you don't have somebody that, killed a person, got fired from one law enforcement agency, and 2 months later they're on the sheriff's department. Not calling any names with stuff like that, but things like that happen. So that's what has been going on in the political realm. But I always post, America, this is what y'all voted for. So y'all wanted it. Well, I'm just reporting what has happened and what is happening under y'all administration. Because I love her. You ask her, they want to talk separate but equal. Can we? Oh no, that was Leah. She was like, they talk separate but equal. Can we have our own president? Then, if that's the case, can we have just a black president on top of what we have now? I don't know what it is, but it's kind of been sucking out there in America right now. Last but not least, man, I just want to give my thoughts, prayers for over the next 2 to 3 years for anybody that's trans in the military. They have issued the military has issued a directive that you will be barred from reenlistment if you are trans or if you even gone to the doctor to discuss being trans or gender identity and having issues with your gender identity. Unfortunately to say, if you are having thoughts like that, or you have gender dysmorphia or anything, don't go see a military doctor. I hate to have to tell or advise our people to do that are in the military, but don't go see a military doctor. You need to go see a private doctor. Make sure that they're not putting that into your military records, because you will probably be barred from reenlistment, and you won't be able to reenlist over the next 2 to 3 years until hopefully we get some elections and we get to get this administration out. And if they lose, they actually leave. So there's a couple of like hurdles we got to do in there to actually get us back on the right track. But for now, I hate to say it, but you got to go back in the closet with any of that if you're in the military. So that's all I got, man. Other than Daredevil Born Again, Buff, I don't know if you're going to talk about it. I know you were kind of excited about it, but I'm loving it so far. So just want to throw that out there, and then I'll toss the ball over to you.
Very useful stuff, man, with the military and trans, man. Useful stuff. I made a post about Atlanta being the only major city with one airport. And fellow Atlanta natives and residents came for me. I'm looking out for y'all. But hey, if y'all want to be a city that large with one airport where you have to hunt for parking and deal with TSA pre-check long lines. Have you seen an Atlanta pre-check line before?
Right.
Like it's crazy. Listen, I got 3 to choose from where I'm at. Ferg got at least 2. Hell, Risey can go, if I'm not mistaken, you can go to like Nashville, Montgomery, or you can shoot over to Atlanta if you need to. But
Or just Birmingham.
yeah, or Birmingham.
Quicker.
You know, like LA has 3. I went down the list of the major cities that have more than one, but they didn't like me talking about their city. So I will mind my 3 airport having business when it comes to that. I mentioned how my daughter made the special program last episode. And I want to say about 3 or 4 days after that, everybody in the county got an email saying, oopsie, we admitted too many people. We admitted more people than than spots for the program. And so I read that message and said, well, they ain't talking to us. So I'm not gonna pay this no more attention.
Sucks to be you. Damn, some people gonna be pissed off.
So what you're not gonna do? So it's like in the next 10 to 14 days, we'll be sending out the corrections and things like that. So I did have that attitude, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is gonna be devastating. And Tabitha and I talked about it, but all that to say, we got the new email. She's still in, but I do feel for those parents and kids who were really looking forward to getting into this school and got an email that's saying my bad, because I felt like if we had got a my bad email, I would have been like, well, I guess y'all need to find more spots because we still coming. So, but that's terrible, man. That's a bad look on the county and whoever was in charge of that. So I hope they find some type of way to accommodate those parents and kids, because that I couldn't imagine getting that. And one last thing I got, man, is rest in peace, George Foreman. Listeners, if you've been rocking with us for a while, y'all know I'm a big boxing fan. George Foreman, one of the best heavyweights ever. Man fought 81 fights, won 76, lost 5. He's the only fighter that I know of that took 10 years off in his career and came back and resumed it, wound up winning the championship again at like 45, which I think is still a record. Notable wins, 2 against Joe Frazier. He beat Ken Norton, and of course beat Michael Moore, who was the heavyweight champion at the time, a 45-year-old George Foreman, upsetting him. He fought in 4 different decades. He started in 1969, fought till 1977, took 10 years off, came back in 1987, and fought all the way up until, I think, 97. So 4 different decades. And many of you probably know him more for the Foreman grill more than his,
man.
more than his fights.
That Foreman grill.
So that was the shit when it came out, man. But very likable, like a mean guy in the ring, but outside of the ring, I never met him personally, but just seeing him on TV, he seemed like a very just approachable, nice, fun-loving guy. So rest in peace to him, and condolences to his family. That's all I got.
Yeah, man. And if you haven't seen the movie, Big George Foreman, go check that out. It's really really good. It kind of shows and highlights some of the things that he had to go through in his life with putting on that weight, coming back, changing his fighting style. Like a lot of the things that he had to do to be able to take that 10 years off and then come back was a big deal. So, and his fight, why he ended up with the George Foreman grill, right? He had
Mm-hmm.
that fight with his weight, and I think it was diabetes or whatever, or I can't remember, maybe heart congestion or heart failure, whatever it is. It was like,
I think it was heart failure.
yeah, I think it was a heart failure. Is why he started eating way healthier and everything, and trying to lose that weight, so he can get back and fight and trim. Um, great movie. Thoughts, prayers out to him, his family, and the boxing community. Yep, that's all I got.
I really don't have much to say because I want to defer my time to the two of you because there's so much going on. I think we're skipping over it. Just starting with Alien Enemies Act. Can you shed, or Risey shed, a little more insight on what the hell is going on with that, to the point where, for me, is bigger than deportation is the fact that Trump is openly defying federal judges and the implications of that, and what kind of precedents is he setting, and how dangerous is that down the line?
Openly defying while saying that he will always follow what a judge or the court
Yeah, law and
says.
order,
Yeah, yeah. But
party of law and order, right?
I actually believe it. I actually don't know a ton about it. I do know that the administration felt like this was, I guess, a loophole to some of the rulings they've gotten when it comes to deporting immigrants. But with everything they've been doing, and I talked to a coworker about this because he was like, I like most of what they're doing. Like, we do need to reform some of these government agencies. And I'm like, you know what? If they were doing it competently, yeah. But look how clumsily they've done it. To the fact, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they deport like a citizen by mistake?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like they're making like incredible and painting it as, well, we're fixing the problem. No, you created more problems. But I'll see if Razi got more.
And I always want to go back because every time I talk to people about this, um, this is, and maybe your coworker has a point. Maybe they're like, "Hey, I like the idea. Ideally this makes sense." If we were talking about the course of, and you kind of mentioned it, I think earlier, Razi, getting to the next round of elections and things of that nature, if my math serves me correct, we're officially at 60 days, maybe 61 days in.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all things that have happened in a 2-month span, right? So that's what's so big for me is you've done a lot in 60 days. If you would have said he's done enough in 60 days that he could, that's 2 years. He's at midterms worth of decisions and changes. And if he did all this, but strategically did it, it was well thought out, and you were like, I might not agree with it, but I mean, here are the facts, right? Here's the steps that they've taken. Here's the guideline. Here's the blueprint of what they did. Versus, we're just trying to get rid of half the federal government. We're trying to just deport people. We're not going to give them. They were in a gang. According to who? They're Venezuelan, Mexican, whatever they are. They're in a gang. They got a tattoo. No, they didn't even have a federal hearing or anything like that. It's okay if you want to deport illegal immigrants and who are dangerous and criminals and all the things you spoke of in your first term. Okay, as a president, you have the right to do that, but there's a way you have to do that, and he doesn't care. And once again, this is all 60 days in. So, Razi.
Yeah.
46 more to go.
Yeah. The biggest thing is, so for the listeners out there, the Alien and Sedition Act is what they're using to talk about this, alien enemies or whatever. And it was passed in like I think it was like 1798. So 1798 is what the laws that they're using. The last time they used this was during, I think, World War II, to round up Japanese citizens for some part, but just Japanese, people, and put them in concentration camps. And truthfully, that's really what he's using. I can't remember what country he's sending people to or whatever.
El Salvador.
El Salvador. And he's sending them to El Salvador, and it's kind of the same thing. He's just not doing it here in America. He sent a bunch of people to Guantanamo, had to bring them back because he's an idiot. But on top of that, it's like the biggest concern that I have with it is that it supersedes, or he has this loophole Buff kind of talked about, to go around illegal search and seizure, because they can actually enter into homes and enter into private, areas without a warrant just based on this law. And so if we suspect you of being a gang, you got a tattoo like you talked about, Ferg, then I can come into your home without any type of warrant, without any type of due process, without any hearings. I can literally come in your home, drag you out because you got this tattoo, and I don't have to get a judge to look at anything with it. That's the scary part. That's how you end up deporting a citizen. That's how you end up grabbing people and they're here legally, but just because you just assume or you just think they talk with a Venezuelan accent or a Mexican accent, that they're a gang member. Or even if you got to think about, based on communities, a lot of times there could be really good kids that just, hey, I know gang members, right? Yes, I know somebody that's a gang member. I walk to school with them. They peel off and they go down that alleyway or that corner and they go do their thing while I'm on my way to school. But we're neighbors, right? I grew up with them. I know them. That doesn't make me a gang member. And what ICE is doing is just saying, oh, I saw you walking with that gang member. You're a gang member too. Both of y'all out of here. Those are the things that's the issue that we're running into now, is that it just doesn't give anybody due process. And to your point about them just finding these loopholes and everything, it really comes down to norms. Nobody went back to this 1700 law and said, you know what, we need to take that off the books because somebody might use it in this manner, right? Nobody really thought through that. And that's okay, because norms, standard practices, we're good. Nobody's going to do that. We don't have to worry about that. And Trump just said, screw all that. Find me the most random loophole. I don't care, what state was it that went back to the 1800 law on anti-DEI or whatever. Like all that. They're going back as far as they can and say, oh, that's still on the books. So I won't be surprised if Alabama started arresting people that have ice cream in their back pockets, because that's still on the books too. Like, you got some ice cream in your back pocket, you're going to jail. Like, that's the type of stuff that we're dealing with right now, is that they are finding the most antiquated, random laws and saying, since nobody went back and said that's not a law anymore, I can use it, and I can use it for the most nefarious purposes possible. So it's frustrating to think from execution, and above to your coworker's point about, it sounds good in theory. I think everybody's like, yeah, let's support those gang members. Let's, work on the red tape of the government process. Let's talk about who we really need. I don't know, do we need Space Force? Talk about cutting government, but at the same time, he created a whole new government agency with that, right? He deputized Doge and created a new agency for that. Like, we already don't have auditors, right? He fires the inspectors generals who does the audits and does the exact same thing that Doge is supposed to be doing, right? He fires them and then creates Doge and lets them go do it. And they're doing it so clumsily, to your part, like you're talking about. It's like they don't really know what they're doing. They don't know the agencies that, like, there's no 10-man team that can go in and just look at all this data for how complicated the government is and say, yep, cut 10% here, cut 15%, cut 10% there in 20 days, 10 days. There's just no way for that to happen. And then not to have the inspectors generals that's been looking at this stuff all the time. And they've saved the Americans way more money than Doge could or has anyway. Right? I think like one inspector general is like he's saved $18 billion in his tenure of like 10 to 15 years, where Doge has only done, I think they said they're at like 2 billion once you really take that wall down that they have and really look through what they're talking about, the contracts that they're canceling and everything like that. Like, most of what they're talking about the full contract. Doesn't really care about how much is actually already been paid. Doesn't talk about what's already been allocated that has to still be paid out, unless they're going to do a Trump and not pay out the contractors that already have delivered stuff, which, I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility either, that Trump just says, nope, we're not going to pay it. We don't care if you've already delivered services. So that's really what is concerning about this. To your point, Ferg, it's not the one-off thing. It's not the anecdote. It's really the theme of what's happening that really concerns me with the administration.
And all that, Razi, I agree with everything you said. My biggest concern, and maybe I didn't fully grasp, is the fact that they're making moves, they're moving fast, they're finding loopholes, and then when somebody catches you, because this judge basically said there was 2 planes that were in the air, turn the planes around. Did they turn the planes around? No. Then they released a 3rd plane. So even after the court order was made. And so loophole, okay, you found a loophole. My bad. We should have secured that. I'm telling you the loophole doesn't exist. I'm giving you a court order to turn around, and this is unlawful. And when we talk about checks and balances, right?
Well, that's the thing. The Supreme Court said that it does not matter what the courts say because Trump can decide what he wants to do, and he's not liable for whatever he does. Like he can't be in prison for it, right? He can't be held accountable for it. You can't, because that is part of his job. Like that's the thing about it. Administration of these things is part of his job, which means that nobody can go after him. Those judges don't have authority based off of the Supreme Court ruling to tell him to do anything.
And is this a one-off, Razi? If this was Obama, if this was Trump 1, did he have that same anonymity? Is the correct word, right? Like,
no.
This like, did they just make this guy king?
Essentially, they did.
Because he really can't do anything because the executive branch is supposed to execute
the law, but how he does it and how he decides what he wants to execute and how he wants to execute it, the Supreme Court essentially said, nope, you can't hold him accountable for it if you don't like it. Now, the thing is, he can be impeached, right? There's still that option. And that's what the Supreme Court says, is that there's no legal remedy for it. It's an administrative remedy for it through Congress. Congress isn't going to impeach him right now. That's that. So you don't have any check and balance on his power. So to your point, he is a king at this point in time. He can do whatever he wants.
There's no benefit to impeaching him. It's not like he hasn't been impeached before.
When I say impeach, it's actually impeach him and hold him like accountable for it, right? Find him guilty and
impeach him, remove him from office.
Yeah, that would never happen. That will, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that. I guess we'll talk about Department of Education another day because that's very concerning with young kids. Being someone who mentors kids who are, a lot of them are headed towards college, kids who are in college who have financial aid and student loans. It's a very, very real. I was talking to a family member just yesterday, and she doesn't know what she doesn't know what the outcome for her daughter is going to be when it comes to education. Like, is she going to be able to get financial aid? Is she going to be able to apply for student loans? What does that look like? So that's I guess a conversation for another day, because we can probably take half the show.
I'm not as concerned about financial aid and student loans and everything like that. The administration already, they shifted over to the SBA, so somebody is administering. You'll be able to get it. What they're doing is making everything less efficient, right? Like, I've got student loans over here at the SBA. I'm going to have Title I and Title 10 funds, which are like your like special ed, all that stuff. I don't know where that's going to go. So if the Department of Education blows up and they get rid of Department of Education, that has to go somewhere. Student loans have to go somewhere. You have your any type of federal funding has to go somewhere. You do have to have some type of testing and oversight. And how are we doing, right? Who's going to start compiling the data from all the education for the America to be able to just say, where are we at as not just each individual state? There's going to have to be that. And so all that's going to be super disjointed, and it'll have different areas, and it just does not work that way. It's just super inefficient to not have a Department of Education that's looking at all of that at the same time, instead of each, like, department having to do it. Can you guys not hear me?
It's it's been real bad today.
It's can't wait to listen to the show to get your points. But look, I mean, it is what it is. Let's go ahead and let's jump into it, man. Let's go ahead and anybody have a question? You want to go ahead and start? We want to jump into it, Sophie, or she's spring break and she's on break from recording as
Right.
well. I guess we'll find that answer out later too.
58. And then we got Sophie. She don't want to hear this boring stuff. What's going on?
Soliver.
Yes.
Soliver.
Hey, Sophie, has anybody told you you look more like Ollie than Ollie does?
No one besides you.
But you do, you like.
I'm an evolved Ollie. I'm just better.
Yes, you're like a Charizard of Ollie.
Imagine like being a de-evolved Sophie. Never
De-evolved Sophie.
de-evolved.
Yeah.
Cool, isn't it?
Digimon.
Yeah. Digimon.
I mean, is it just me, or am I the only person that sees that? Especially with your hair like that.
I think it's definitely with the hair like that.
The hair definitely helps. Yeah. All right, Sophie, it's been a minute, so you've had a couple of weeks to come up with a joke.
I still didn't have one until today.
Give me what you got.
What do you call a song about tortillas? A rap.
We're definitely not gonna get a chance now.
That's so funny.
They didn't hear it.
They didn't hear it.
I heard it.
What do you call us?
It's a rap.
I said it like 3 times. Just our internet is really bad.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear it.
Got that anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. No. I was thinking nachos.
Nachos.
As a matter of fact, I want nachos now.
Yeah,
That's real.
that does sound good.
Mm,
It was chicken on it,
nachos.
loaded nachos, not just like nachos and cheese.
I'm gonna say very good. It depends on your dad and how he edits it to make it.
Yeah, because our internet's not very
that was a
good.
good one.
I don't know what happened here.
Yeah, I'll reset it after the show. So I may have to, if it goes out again, I'll edit it. I'll reset it before the show. All right, get up
I
out
did
of
some notes in your notebook about how I'm the favorite child, just so you can like remember.
whatever.
All right,
It's
Solomon.
You want to tell Buff the difference in Spotify and YouTube music?
No.
Do you like it?
No, I don't.
You don't like it?
YouTube music is kind of an op, actually. Spotify, I like
She says
Spotify.
what?
It's a
YouTube music is kind of an op. We're not cool. We're not.
So I will say,
How about you,
Buff, you're right. It's YouTube music has a lot of bells and whistles, but the user interface and like navigation is compared to Spotify. So just throw that out there. Like once you get used to it, I think YouTube would be fine. It's just I liken it to the difference of Apple and Android. Like Apple, a 3-year-old can pick it up and figure it out and like navigate it just because it's intuitive. Like you just kind of know what to do with it versus like an Android. It works. It has all the bells and whistles, but it's not super intuitive. You got to know where to go and what to do with it. And so that's generally what it is. But when you get down to the music, being able to watch the videos, like the features that it has is better. It's just that navigation is just super duper hard. And coming off of that, it just makes it a lot harder. So that's what Sophie's trying to get used to.
Okay. Okay. I never heard that. All right. So what's up?
Who wants to go first?
I can go. Go ahead, Buff.
Yours is probably better. Mine deals with the White House, but not politics. No, it does kind of deal with politics. All right, I'll go first. We just had the Super Bowl, right? Last month, almost 2 months ago now. Philadelphia Eagles came out on top, and they have reportedly, allegedly, are not going to do the White House visit. And I'm assuming that's because of who's president. I just want to get your guys' opinion on that. Do you think tradition should be maintained no matter who's in office at the time? Or do you think this is a special circumstance where, hey man, it's okay? Because like, I guess I want you to look at it at if Obama was president and we had some major league or predominantly white team that said, no, we're not going to go to the White House.
U.S. hockey team or something?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So should tradition be maintained no matter who's in the office, or do you agree with this exception? Because I think the Golden State Warriors did that as well. Mm-hmm. So just want to get you guys' thoughts on that.
Can I get a yes, but? Right. I think I agree norms should be maintained. you should go, whether it's a Republican or Democrat president, whatever. I do think that should happen, right? I don't want to get to that we're so political where it's like I'm a Democrat and so I'm not going because there's a Republican president. So and for the most part, I've always said this, right? I always talked about how I'm an independent. I lean Democrat, is because I think in most Republicans' minds, they are doing what they think is best for the country, and they have the country's best interest in mind, right? So where they have, and John McCain was a perfect example of this, right? John McCain was like, hey, they're good people. We just have policy differences, right? We want to execute differently. We think these things helps the economy. We think these things helps America more versus what Trump is doing. And so that's what the yes but comes from. I think that norms should be upheld. You should be going to the White House. You should be honored to meet the president of the United States. I would not be honored to meet Donald Trump. I would not be honored to meet the person that is literally trying to destroy what America stands for, does. When you talk about, you're going after Canada, like Canada, the most laid back, chill country in the world, like next to maybe Sweden, and you're going after Canada. I don't get it, right? Like you're alienating our closest neighbors, our allies, you're aligning with Russia, you are going after DEI. And so again, these predominantly super like black teams, right? Predominantly black teams are saying, no, we're not going when you're really literally coming after us. There's a difference of, you think America would be better with trickle down economics, and you think taxes should be a little different or whatever, even if you're pro life or whatever, and you don't agree with abortion or whatever. But when you're literally coming after civil rights, I think you need to be able to make a stand on that, right? It has been about 23 days since I have graced Target, right? I haven't walked into Target in 23 days. And it's because of that, right? I'm trying to take a stand. And it's that same thing I think we need to take with Donald Trump at this point. So I wouldn't want to go see him either. So I don't feel bad, or I don't disagree with their choice not to go, but I don't want this to become the norm, to your point, where I'm the US, I don't know, rifle team, and we're all white and we're not going to see Obama or even Biden because he's a Democrat, right? AOC is talking about running with Barry Sanders. And so they become the president and vice president picks next time. Are you not going to go because of that? I don't know if it'll happen. I'm just saying that if that's who becomes the president next there. So it's this thought of being proud of being an American and honored to meet the leader of America versus Donald Trump. And so I'm good with their decision, though.
I just want to tell the listeners he meant AOC and Bernie Sanders, not the Hall of Fame running back
Figure.
from the Detroit
Yeah.
Lions.
Yes, that bike.
Although, I mean, I like Barry, so.
My answer is no. Simply because traditions run their course. And sometimes we try to hold on traditions too long. Some have their place in society and they help bring us together and they make society better. But if we look across time and traditions that were stopped and, that phased out, and they usually phase out when it's time to phase out. This one, I'm not saying it's time for this one to phase out, but this is a good example. It never really wasn't, it's rarely been an issue before, right? There have been teams that made the team may seem more liberal or conservative, but the office of the President of the United States of America was an office that could be respected. A tradition that should be upheld is the office of the President of the United States should be respected. Not the fact that somebody should have to go see them. Like, and when not respected, respectful. I guess to clarify, like that should be something, like I don't have to agree. I didn't agree with George Bush. I didn't agree with certain people, but there was still a certain a certain amount of respect. that they held, that they carried as a leader of the free world. And that still, at the end of the day, like you said, we might not agree with how to get there, but and maybe they prioritize certain groups more than others. But at the end of the day, I did not see them, or most people did not see them as this symbol of evil. Where we're at now, there's a reason this question is being asked. There's a reason we're here. And it's not about the Philadelphia Eagles. So to put the blame on them, they're one of the only people that can stand up to them. We have politicians that can't do that. If you had politicians that didn't have to see Donald Trump, there was no ramifications, do you think they would have been at his inauguration? Do you think they would be going to meet him and have interactions with him and his counterparts? No, they have to. Jalen Hurts and his team does not. It speaks more volumes about the office of the president and what's going on in the executive office than the Philadelphia Eagles. And so I think this is a statement that, and if we continue to see this, and we have leadership that is traditionally just, they're not too far one way or the other, right? This is new. And so this is tradition that I don't think this is a tradition that's being broken. Honestly, I think this is a stance to stand up for something you believe in. If we get back to somebody who can show respect and respects the president of the office of the president of the United States, I don't think we'll have this again. Now, if, like you said, it's a U.S. shooting team or, the Proud Boys, beer drinking champs or whoever they are, and they don't want to go visit AOC or whoever, you would kind of see that because of what they stand for. It's more about them than the president. As long as the president and the people in power are doing what they're supposed to do, then there's no reason to challenge the tradition. When traditions become challenged, then there's more going on one way or the other. Either it's the person who, like in this case, it's the president, or it's the team. This case, I think they're doing the right thing. I think they're doing things that more people wish they could do.
The reaction seems to be different when it's the position of power that changes the tradition versus the employee or whoever is lesser than the position of power decides to change it. What I mean by that is we saw earlier this year, we saw late last year, the Washington Post, who normally endorses a presidential candidate, which, by the way, I don't think newspapers should endorse presidential candidates. That's my personal opinion. But that's traditionally what they do. Their new owner, Jeff Bezos, we're not going to do that this year. Position of power. And while there was some reaction to it, it wasn't what you got when the Golden State Warriors decided not to go to the White House, or what you've heard about the Philadelphia Eagles no longer doing it. But we've seen Trump, we've seen this administration change a whole lot of traditions, right? And it's been perfectly okay. So if I were a player on the team, or if I were a fan of the team, I would be okay if they went to the White House. Like, if I was a player, I'd look at it as, look, I'm not going to meet him. I'm going to a place that holds the office that leads our country. I've never been to the White House, or whatever the case may be. If I was a fan of the team, I'd be like, hey, they just doing what tradition does. But I'm okay with them saying no thanks, because unlike other presidents, he specifically went after their profession his first term. He specifically said they should be fired for kneeling. They should be fired for protesting police brutality. They wasn't even protesting something that didn't matter. They were protesting, police murdering unarmed citizens at the time. So, and he went after them and called them sons of bitches. So I get it. And so I think they are well within their right to say, nah, we good. Because when positions of power, when they change traditions, it's kind of like, okay. So I'm okay with the players though.
If there's no benefit to them going, maybe you always wanted to go to the White House and meet the president. If that's your dream, cool. I have more respect for them not going. I have more respect for them standing up for what they believe in, because this is, I guess, this is different than the backlash that Snoop and others got at the beginning of the year for having something to do with his inauguration because there was financial gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never really, unless it's just super morally wrong, down somebody for their getting their bag. But if this was my team, I would feel almost offended if they went, honestly, because I'm like, dog, like Philly, that's a city of brotherly love. It's one of the blackest cities out there, right? It's when we think about it, and it's like, and to think about how he is blatantly showing how he cares about you and your team, even to the point where it could possibly cause some division in the team. As an ally, it's like you see what he's doing out there. I need you to stand by me right now. I need you to stand by and show that you're not okay with what's going on. You're not okay with what's happening in America. Because, the closest thing I can compare it to, Razi, is when we were in Afghanistan and we had that situation where it was a cultural divide. And you really saw the difference in how other people in our unit viewed others. And it wasn't okay with a lot of us. And the people who stood by us that were non-black or stood on the side of what I would call right, or my version of right, or our version of right, we gained more respect for them and our relationship with them flourished. Other people, not so much. There was a rift in our unit to the point where we had to have the chaplain and the combat stress and debriefing team come because we weren't operating on full force. And I feel like this is one of those situations where these things are this is a unique situation. Maybe if it was first term, I might get it. He's all talk. What he's did in 60 days, if this was a year and a half in and where he's doing this stuff in 60 days, he showed you that I don't want you at the White House. I don't care about you at the White House. Hell, you shouldn't even be able to get into the White House unless you're going through the back entrance with the servants. They should have a barbecue at Barack Obama's house. Michelle.
And I believe that's what the Warriors did. They met with Obama.
Man, that would start a GoFundMe. I'll put money to put some on the grill. Man, that would be, man. They need to have that on Juneteenth weekend, have a barbecue at Obama House and call it the cookout.
Oh, yeah, it'll still be the all season.
Call it the cookout and have the players and their, black and white, like these, rather than going to the White House, now in black culture, there's this accomplishment for, other people being invited to the cookout.
Yeah.
So invite the rest of the team to the cookout. Barack, Michelle, I know y'all don't listen to the show, but if anybody listens to the show and got to invite the Eagles to the cookout, Juneteenth weekend.
I like that. Yeah. Who got the next one?
I can. I'll go.
I can go. Oh, right, go right.
We talked a little bit about nostalgia and whether traditions should stay or not. And I saw a post that said, "Can we all admit it now? The Wiz was not a good movie." And I want to ask you, brothers, was The Wiz a good movie? Like, did it make sense for the time period? Are you going to show your kids? Like, I do a lot of like retro movies. Like me and my kids, we went and we watched The Sandlot a couple of weeks ago, right? We watched the Wizard. We watched Little Monsters, where the kid under the stairs and all of that, like all those Princess Bride. So I try to bring kind of that old nostalgia back with them on some of the older movies. And so I haven't let them watch The Wiz yet. And so it's not one that I'm like, yeah, we got to watch The Wiz. Are we going to go ahead and admit that The Wiz wasn't a good movie?
No. I'm holding out just because I do believe that it's not a great movie, but they had some great scenes. seen some of the musical scenes, the dance scenes. I think that is where if we can just fast forward to Can You Win, and all the Michael Jackson Scarecrow 720 and 80 spin that he did, like, and all that makeup, You Can't Win, like all that, like, it's, I think that the dance scenes and some of the theatrical performances is what made the movie iconic. If it wasn't a musical, I would put the musical numbers on The Wizard of Oz against the musical numbers on The Wiz, and to me, The Wiz wins hands down. I think that for that. Now, man, they must have been in South Oz or something, downtown Munchkinland or whatever. But it the budget and all this stuff, and then also it was black cinema in the 70s. The budget, you got to give credit to what it was. How much we look at, yeah, it's not a great movie compared to freaking Wicked, right? With this astronomical budget, I would love to see the budget for Wicked versus The Wiz and what black people had to work with at that time. So, you know what? Yes, it's a good movie. Just because I don't want to belittle what it took to make that. I think about, and of course it's about race, right? This too is because of slavery. So I take the three of us, and I consider us all fairly successful, and we worked hard to get where we're at, right? And for many of us, we're probably considered success stories of our families,
Yeah.
and so the three of us are, like I said, I think what we consider fairly successful, especially looking at where we started. And a lot of our peers I would think, would agree. But then when you look at the fact that there's other people who start where we're at now, like this is the baseline. This is their base level. They're starting off with six figures. Their families have connections. They have generational wealth. There's all these things that we were just talking about earlier about worrying about retirement and investing. They're 3 generations ahead of where we would want to be. And so I look at The Wiz the same way. When you look at black cinema in 1978, the year the movie came out, what did they have compared to where they were at and the quality of a film and stuff like that? Even if you go back, and I did my research while my computer was rebooting, the budget was a lot more expensive than I thought it was, believe it or not. But at the same
What
time,
was it? Did you?
24 mil. Let's look at the fact that it was 24 mil. Star Wars, but you can just as easily say the first Star Wars was trash, right? When you look at those things, it's easy to make that a cult classic or a film that we just respect. When you go back, because if you go back and look at it now, you'll be like, yeah.
And it's been remastered like 3 times. So you have to go back to the actual original and see what it looked like then. The Wiz hasn't been really remastered, or it tried to be,
Yeah.
right? They upscaled it to 4K, which actually brought out the flaws more than it did help it. So I probably would have left it grainy.
Yeah. The expectations. Look
You
at
started seeing all the makeup and
what did a
everything.
great movie. What did a great movie in 1978 look like? I guess that's the better question.
Yeah, that's the hard part. But I'll let Buff answer before I jump into mine.
I can be brief, actually. I agree pretty much because of mostly everything Ferg would say. I would just say that for me, it's been so long since I watched it. I definitely would like to just watch it again and get more recency bias on it in order to really give an opinion. But I'm like a lot of what Ferg said, man. I think you.
Until you get to the dance and the music, like you're gonna be like, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta give it grace. I will say, like going back and watching a lot of old stuff, not even because of the budget, just a lot of times old stuff don't hold up, and it's just our nostalgia that keeps.
I mean, you go look at the old Turtles
movie. Is a bad movie too.
You go look at old Turtles movie that we just thought was crazy.
It's like, yeah,
trash. Go back and just look at old cartoons and eyes facing one way. I think X-Men. Go back and look at the original X-Men series. That doesn't hold up well. It's just so much. It's just with it that was 47 years ago, man. What do you expect?
Yeah, that's what I used the because I was talking with some other friends about this, and I used the analogy or the phrase that like Quincy Jones walked so Tyler Perry could run. It think that The Wiz was a Tyler Perry movie of that time
No,
period.
we're not doing that. Nope. Nope. Nope.
It, it, it,
No,
it,
no, no, no,
Okay,
no,
I'm
no, no.
glad you
We
said
ain't
it.
about
no,
to
no,
do it.
I'm glad you
We
I'm
ain't
said
just
it.
no,
saying
no, no,
it
no,
was it
no.
was
You're wrong.
and
No.
so it was good for the people
It's a
it was
Spike Lee
made for.
movie.
It's
Spike Lee. It has its impact. The message stood up. You appreciate it, but like Spike Lee movies at its time weren't they weren't the best quality movie.
that they were produced well and directed well. And so I think what happened with The Wiz
We're not doing
was
no, we're not doing Tyler Perry.
it, I liken it to Tyler Perry.
Are
Like
you
when I
liking it
look
to
at
being wrong?
because the thing about it is it's the production of what they did. They brought in a lot of people that weren't like great at creating movies, right? It was Quincy Jones thought he could do it. I can't even remember who directed the movie, but it wasn't like a huge director that they were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get you to direct The Wiz, right? It was somebody that was a smaller director, but it was a black director, and so they were like, yep, that's who we're bringing on. Costumes were great for what the budget was on it, but I think they blew a lot of their budget on the stars, right? They leaned into Diana Ross and Michael Jackson and everything else, and gave them an opportunity to act, especially with Michael Jackson, right? Like he hadn't been acting before then, and so I think that it to me it gives more of a Tyler Perry than it does a Spike Lee because it wasn't a like I am trying to like be the best in this genre. But they were just making a movie and they wanted to fill it in. But to your point,
It was a
what was a good
musical.
movie in '78,
It
right?
was a
It
musical,
was
sir.
blaxploitations was happening, right? That was kind of the thing. It was a musical, which wasn't gonna be this action movie and everything else. So and it was over the top whimsical, right? You're trying to create Oz, so you can't just go out and buy some clothes. You can't make a Dolomite or something where you just go buy a leather jacket and some regular pants and put it in regular. Like it's harder to create, and so I think it was good for what it was and for the time. But I don't think it was a great movie. I think it's nostalgia. It was for the culture, and just like we love Belly, Belly was not a
Belly. I
great
was just
movie.
about to say, damn it. I was about to
Trash.
say
Yeah,
Belly. You don't. Whoa, wait, wait, wait,
see,
wait, wait a minute. Wait, time out. We don't know if Belly is a trash
Or the
movie.
best music video ever.
Yes, yes. It's like a really bad good movie or a really good bad movie.
the nostalgia of it for the culture, right? It did a lot of things in visually, like that whole blue tone thing that Hype Williams was doing that he brought from the video. That found its way into other movies. If you look at some of the Tom Cruise movies when he did kind of the club scenes and stuff like that, I can't remember the one where he was the assassin, Jamie Foxx was his driver or whatever. They kind of had that same
Oh
feel
yeah,
a little bit. So
yeah. Trash products are known to have a good idea too. Like the XFL. Look at the XFL changed how the NFL shoots the
yep,
game.
yep. And so I
So
think
yeah.
that's what the Wiz did was it brought that nostalgia. It brought that hey, black people can create these things. The musical numbers, right? Like I would watch the musical numbers in The Wiz before I watched The Wizard of Oz and the musical numbers in that, right? I think that's where you got some of that high notes of the movie. But as a movie, we just got to be like objective about it. As a movie, it's pretty bad, bro. Like we just gotta admit
All
that.
70s movies were bad then.
All 70 movies. I mean, there were, and again,
Go
like I
look.
said,
Go
it's
tell me a good 70s movie.
if you put 70s movies that were the sci-fi era and everything like that, it's that they were pretty bad, but they weren't the Wiz bad. Let's be honest there. They weren't the Wiz bad. Like the Reese's peanut butter cup for the nose, like that.
The first Rocky, people like the first couple of Rockies.
Trash.
They came out in the
trash.
right? So it's easier to shoot. You're not trying to add in like the
But if
budget
you
doesn't go towards set design and all of that,
the
right?
peanut butter
Like
cup for the
there's a
nose was
huge
part
difference.
of it was part of the appeal because it was part of like all the trash and the griminess from the subway. Like if you look at Oz was Brooklyn. Like they made the grit, the Emerald City, all these things, the whole subway scene. It's when you try to compare it to the original and what you want it to be versus like part of it was the grit of it. Like that was a whole thing. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't have food stamps in there somewhere. Like it was probably the grit of, I want to say they were in Brooklyn, right?
I
So
think so.
if you look at what it is, it's things that it's harder to relate to now because we're so far removed from it. But at that time when that was more so the norm, when you go back and look at things at the black community at that time, it was more of a relatable movie versus what the Wiz will look like today.
Yeah, I would like them to recreate the Wiz. I think that's where it might make sense to recreate it, and those tones of you're talking about. Like, no, I think it'll be a good recreation with current, like, being able to do it with current technology and everything, and really explain, because I think, to your point, that wasn't very well explained, is that it's an imaginary land that's set in Brooklyn and bringing that subway and all that stuff, versus, because everybody was looking for the Oz, right? And Oz was not the subway.
I think the Oz was
Oz
Empire State
was
Building. I think the Emerald City was Empire State Building,
Emerald
right?
City. No, no. I mean, but even that, I'm talking about the land of Oz. So, like, going through the huge field, right? Which makes sense because she's from Kansas and all that. Like, it's very difficult to say, here's Oz from the book, right, in the movie, and then say, now we're putting it in Brooklyn, and people to make that shift like that without knowing that that's what's happening. That it is her imagining it and bringing what she knows into this land. I think if they recreated it and set it up and staged it better, I think it would be a pretty dope movie.
All right, you just don't like black people. All right,
I kind of don't want you to compare Quincy Jones
Yeah,
to Tyler Perry again.
I mean
That's the only thing.
I was into that. Now I can't agree with anything you say for the rest of the show.
And to go a step further, I really wish Tyler Perry would stop making movies.
Well, Cat Williams just bought
He did.
or the Army base. Yeah,
In Alabama, right?
Tyler
Yeah,
Perry says he has a fan base that likes his stuff,
he does.
and he makes it movies
Yeah.
for them. If you don't like his stuff, don't watch it, and he's still gonna make the money from the people who do watch his things.
Very arrogant and selfish way to look at it, but continue to make your money, Tyler. Okay. Just wish he would hire some writers and stuff.
maybe he can hire the people that made Oz. I mean, the Wiz. Get some ideas. Better than the peanut butter cup for the nose is better than them wigs he be using.
The wigs.
And like his so-called fan base, Rozzy, they watch it, but then they come and complain about it. Like, why does he do this? But you keep watching it. That's why
I spend extra money. You're gonna put those wigs on, slap them on. What did he say? He makes whole series in like a weekend or a week or whatever. That, like, so the production quality is not there because he's churning out so many. It's quantity over quality a lot of times with his studio.
to me, and this is like a more serious tone. I think it speaks to what he feels his customers deserve in a sense. Okay, yeah, they're gonna show up. Like, you don't want to attempt to give them something better. Like, you don't want to give them some quality every once in a while. You're just gonna keep feeding them this slop.
I wouldn't call it
That's
slop.
just-
Like I said, I think what he
it's
has
slop.
is he creates
It's slop.
creates a hybrid stage play, like,
Slop.
No, you ain't about to defend Tyler Perry and on the Wiz. That's not what you about to do. That ain't what you about to do. You can understand
slop
what
at
he
that.
going
It's
with it, but you
predictable
can't
slop.
understand the creativity of the Wiz. Man, next question, man. Let's
understand
let's go ahead and close it out. Hey, hush. Yeah.
I always have to say though, I am like, he's winning. I'm happy for him. I love the success, and I want to be interested in his films. That's why it is disappointing that he makes the type of movies he makes that aren't good.
Would you be okay with if he upped his movie quality and kept his series quality kind of the same?
Never watch any of the
Almost like
series.
Yeah, because
telenovela, like
I'm not watching the series. So yeah, the series can stay terrible. But it's not just the wigs. Like I watch a show called Reasonable Doubt that has some questionable wigs in it as well. I want his writing to be.
like you say, not as predictable. He's telling, and in a writer's course, like they talk about it, like there's only so many kind of storylines that you can tell. Generally, every movie is almost the same. Your story arcs are generally the same, and so it's very hard to bring something new and not be kind of rote and kind of bring it up the same thing every time. It's the dialogue around it. I think is really how you do it, right? The settings, the mood. It's you can tell the exact same story and make it interesting. And I think that's the issue there. It's because he doesn't have writers, right? He's saying the same things in every show. He's hitting the same beats in every show because he's not bringing in fresh writers to give a different dialect or a different dialogue or say things differently. And like, so it's sounding the same because he's writing the same thing every time. So I do feel like if he brought in new writers, a lot of that would get better there.
I'm
If
upset we
he
spent this much
trusted
time
them to
talking about
do it.
Tyler Perry.
I mean, but you look at it like a dope producer in music. When they're putting the album together, yeah, they could probably make every beat. But Pharrell will go to Dre, or when Kanye wasn't crazy, or Kanye and say, send me a couple of tracks. It's just about incorporating different ideas. Fergus, right? Too much time on Mister.
I'd rather talk about him than Donald Trump. So hey, we're doing good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and close it on out.
I'll start, man. Two things. One, Assassin's Creed dropped. So my eyes are bloodshot red because I was up to 2:00 in the morning last night playing. As soon as we finish recording, I will not be editing for at least another few hours because I'm going back to it and I'm going to continue to play it. It is beautiful. It is not Ghost of Tsushima beautiful, but it is a very, very well like designed game, visually stunning. It uses the power of the next gen, the PS in my case. So it does everything it needs to do for an Assassin's Creed game. It's very much an Assassin's Creed game. I don't like how they build it as Yasuke you were gonna be able to play him a lot. I haven't had that opportunity, and what I'm seeing from a lot of the reviews is that you don't play him as much as people want it to. And I was kind of excited to play that Black Samurai. For folks who don't know who Yasuke is, he's a Black Samurai in the game, and he was in real life, he was a Black Samurai. And so it's kind of cool that they brought him in, incorporated him into the game. But they build it like you were going to be playing with him a lot. And a lot of people are saying you don't even have to play his storyline to finish the game. It's not like he's adding to it. It's just kind of an addition. But Assassin's Creed does that a little bit. They bring in characters and then they revisit them in later iterations. So maybe that's what we get. We'll get a full kind of Yasuke game later on. But overall, I just want to say it's a really great game, a really good game. So folks that are out there that like video gaming, go check that out. And finally, I want to talk about the anti-DEI crowd. We talk a lot overarching about things that are happening, but it's hitting home for me and my group. You guys know I talk about the scholarships that I was the donor rep for, Jenica Kimberly, as well as the KD scholarship. And we're working on kind of some fundraising for the school board that I'm on right now. But ultimately, the Department of Education, which, they're saying that I don't know if it's the Department of Education, whatever, the Justice Department, Trump's Justice Department launched an investigation onto UAB and UA, talking about they're doing divisive concepts and everything. And one article that I saw literally listed the scholarship that I'm a donor rep for on the article. I was kind of excited. I was like, Mama, we made it. But when I was setting that scholarship up, I actually saw a little bit of the writing on the wall, and we actually didn't put that it was race was requirement or any type of requirement in the scholarship. But what I did is I made the Black Alumni Network the selection committee for it. So while we don't require it, I at least know that there are some Black people that are selecting, and they can give some thought into why we would give it to, somebody that's white or whatever. It could be that they grew up in the culture, they grew up in the areas that we know that are predominantly Black, raised, adopted by a Black parent, something like that. Like, we could at least know that the culture is represented in that white person if we did give it to them. And even with that, we're being called out for it. So people, when you say we're past racism and the anti-DEI isn't about racism, I just want to say 100% it is, because anything that has gay in it, the Enola Gay, and they're taking that down off of websites because it says gay, or if it says, hey, black in the title or in the selection committee, then they're trying to come for it. And so that lets you know that it's not about keeping leveling the playing field and making sure it's merit based. They literally don't want us to encourage ourselves and our communities. They want to take that and be able to spread it out and make sure that white people are getting things that we really need to be given to our community. So just want to call that out, man, the hypocrisy of it all, and just let you know that we play chess, not checkers over here. We already saw it coming, and so we're going to be all right.
Excellent, excellent. I want to keep the serious tone going. Before I do, follow us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Three Brothers No Sense. Check us out. Also, a shout out to the Inspire You on Air ladies, Miss Bambi and Miss Candace Minifield. We hope to have them on here very soon. We're going to have to align some schedules. But what I want to talk about is therapy real quick. One, I want to let everybody know that I won my argument with my therapist last month. We had a disagreement about some things, and between that session and the next session, I took some time to think about what was said to see if I was right or wrong. She did the same. We came back. Her first question was, "Did you think about it?" I'm like, "Yes." And I said, "I still think I was correct." And I laid out examples why. And her response was, "You know what? I thought about it, and you're right." I was like, how about that? So I didn't even know you could argue with your. It wasn't an argument for real. It was a disagreement.
Discussion. Yeah.
It was a discussion, and I thought that was cool, man. We had fun with that. The other thing I want to discuss is something I've noticed about myself that I can't wait for my next session to discuss.
How buff you are?
Is no, I am going to try to get back buff though. Not buff, but just healthier. I have begun at times to resent people who have both parents. And that is no fault of anybody but what I'm dealing with. So anytime somebody with both of their parents alive and they criticize them on something, I've noticed that I've gotten a little sensitive about that. Like, man, let them be. Let them, if that's what they want to do, let them do it. Like, and I had to look at myself and say, yo, I think that's becoming a thing for me. And I can't wait to just discuss that. And I mean, obviously, me not having both of my parents, that's the obvious answer, but I feel like there's always something deeper. And I can't wait to discuss that. And last but not least, a couple of people feel like I was once against therapy. And I just want to correct that. I've never been against therapy. I have always pointed out what I think are faults with it and how it can be misused, and how I question what, a matter of fact, that was one of my questions for the show one time. Is it working? And I felt like at the time, I think it was Ferg, maybe it was you, Rozzy, but one of you guys brought up the example, America continues to get fat, but we have gyms all over the country. So it's not that gyms aren't working. We still just ain't doing our part. Plus our food is trash in this country as well. But, therapy only works when you're willing to be honest and willing to, get to certain root causes and things like that. So I've always been critical that it can be misused. I'm pretty sure it is misused. And I don't like that it's still weaponized at times. If people get in an argument, they disagree. You know what? You need to take your ass to therapy. And they mean that they don't mean that in a genuinely go get some help. They mean that in, you're so far off, you need some professional help. I just think it's still weaponized. So I think I've always spoken about the nuances and the criticisms of it, but I've always been pro therapy. In fact, I think therapy should be a part of reparations for Black Americans. Like, whatever we get, free therapy needs to be included in that joint, especially for Black people. So I just wanted to clear that up because I heard a couple of comments from listeners, and I just wanted to clear that up. So that's all I got.
Love it, man. Love it. I'll let you know, I never thought or took it as you saying you're anti. I always thought, to your point, you were talking nuance, right? You were talking, it's not for everybody at every time, right? Every person in America shouldn't be going to therapy every month, right? Like that's a little bit of an overkill, right? You should be using it as needed when you talk about it. Like I talk about my therapist, right? I went through CPT, I went through grief counseling, I did that, and then we got to a point that she was like, we were coming and that just kind of looking at each other like, got some, got some, got some, and so she was like, look, let's shift to maybe a quarterly or as needed. Call me if you need me
Yeah.
type thing. If something triggers you, we may go and we may have 3 or 4 sessions in a row or a month or 2 in a row, and then we're good and you're back kind of calibrated. And then go back about your life. And so that you're not paying out of pocket, you're paying this money, and we're really not doing much, right? I'm not, she was just like, I don't feel like I'm helping you much by you coming and having these conversations because you're in a good space, you got it. And so now we're on a kind of ad hoc, as needed basis. And like I said, that might be a couple sessions, it might be 5 sessions, and we're done. And then we're back to call me when you need me. So I think it's not a cookie cutter, one size fit all. And that's what I was taking from you when you were saying that. So I just want to kind of reiterate that to the listeners. I think that's what our conversations were more about, nuance and about gray versus trying to. And I think too often everybody wants to make it a cut and dry binary decision on everything, and we like to talk about nuance here in this show. We like to talk about the gray areas
Indeed.
and bring that up. Never take what we're talking about and saying one as our like deep rooted opinion as well, because a lot of times we're bringing up the gray or we're bringing up the opposite opinion so we can have the conversation because we want this to be.
It's more
It
fun
is
that
more
way.
fun that way. So even especially when it's like it's something that generally all 3 of us agree with, it's that conversation will be super boring. So we want the listeners to know that really it is us trying to bring up that. Ferg, you're really really good at that of bringing that contrary position, even if it's not what you think it like believe in your heart.
Yeah. Because I think there's 2 sides to every story, and it goes back to the ist conversation. We can talk about something and kind of look at something because it's the popular opinion and it's the easiest way to go that direction. But like there's probably a little dark to it or a little light to it, depending on what side you're coming from, that we haven't considered, or we don't want to consider, or we refuse to explore. And I think that's why, I mean, that's probably therapy, right? That's the gateway to therapy. It's like I actually did a session with a VA therapist yesterday, and that's kind of where we're going. Is like, sometimes you'll minimize things even though you see it there. Like, you minimize it's and I think that's all therapy is. It's kind of, hey, I see you say you're okay and you're functioning, and you're okay might be better than most people. You're just being okay might be better than most people's best day, right? But what does your best day look like? And what is that? How do we get there? I did a little survey and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm okay. And then we start going through the survey. It's like, did these answers look like somebody who's okay? Right. You know? And like the example you gave, Buff, like, man, part of me has this certain feeling towards, people with both parents, or this, and this, and how dare they don't understand, in your mind, because it makes sense, but it's, how can they understand? How can they even begin to understand what it's like to lose a parent or both parents? So, do you just go allow or make room for their ignorance? And is it ignorance, or is it just your personal experience? And so that's all therapy is, man. And the only reason I always push it is because I always want people to explore the fullness of themselves.
Yes, because we all have blind spots. Like the person that says I'm okay, they genuinely think they okay, and then you start talking about certain issues. Like the first session we had, I just remember us having a discussion, and like my eyes just started watering up. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
where did that come from?
Yeah, that's how mine went yesterday. And I'm like, I'm okay because I'm so used to being, because we were talking about it, in last week was the 3-year anniversary of the death of my father. And so I was on spring break and all this stuff. We start talking about that, wanting to focus on my wife and kids for that day and not bring, because I was gone all week, like I said earlier, and I wanted them just to enjoy that break because there's going to be an anniversary every year, And so, and as I was talking about it, if we would have talked about another 5 minutes, probably would have teared up. But you know how you have that feeling that's up in your chest and up in your, like, almost your eyes, you feel it in the pressure in the back of your eyes and stuff like that. I was there, and I'm like, but part of me is used to being there, and almost like I'm okay being there. And then you have the questions like, should you be okay being there, or should you be okay? Do you not need to learn how to cope when you're there, and then find a way to get back to what good looks like? And so those are things that I think we learn through therapy, or at least explore. Sometimes you open up a can of worms, like, damn, I'm not as good as I thought I was, but that's okay too. Because it's just like you were talking about the gym. I ain't fat, I'm big bone, I'm thick. No, you're fat. Like, like, you're unhealthy. There's certain parts of you that still might look good to you and others, but when you peel back that onion, you get your numbers. When we go to the doctors and do a full assessment, you realize, like, my cholesterol's up, my blood pressure's too high. You realize there's probably some changes that need to be made. The question is, are we going to do it? Back to the gym conversation. Man, love talking to you guys. I don't have a lot. Just getting ready to have a community service not community service, a fundraiser. Just getting ready to have a fundraiser tomorrow for our Lamplighters. We're hosting the Youth Leadership Conference this summer in Houston, so it's a huge undertaking. It's been taking up a lot of my time and energy, and almost to the point where it's overwhelming. So just bear with me. A little drained right now, but it's worth it. At least that's what I keep telling myself. So I think that's about it. Oh, no, we'll have another. No. So when this episode drops, it'll be Monday, and my daughter, my firstborn, she will be celebrating her 10th birthday this upcoming Saturday. So I know you don't listen to the show, but Daddy loves you, Sky. You're the reason I'm a parent. You are just blossom into a beautiful young lady, and I couldn't be prouder of you. And I hope that your birthday is everything you want it to be. And with that being said, 3 brothers, no sense, 6 rules of podcast. Listen, like, share, subscribe, comment, and most importantly, listen again. Talk to you next week. Got my fingers crossed.